I'm here today to introduce our speaker, although I don't think our speaker needs any introduction in this room. Norman McNickle has been a public servant and a highly visible public servant in this community for longer than most of us have probably lived here. So I won't spend a lot of time telling you about him or his service, but I do want to take a couple of minutes to say some nice things about him because he is retiring, because I know it makes him very uncomfortable for me to say nice things about him in public, and really because he deserves to have nice things said about him. Norman and I have worked together at the city. He's been the city manager the whole time I've been on council. I've been on council for almost the whole time he's been the city manager, but just a tiny fraction of his actual service at the city of Stillwater. Being on council with Norman as a city manager has just been fantastic because of his, there's never been a time where I felt like this is a new city manager. He's going to have to get his, figure out what's going on. There's never been a time where I've ever felt like he didn't know how to handle a situation. And I think for our community and for city government in general, having a city manager who is calm, cool, and collected whenever something crazy comes up, like this morning when we had a water treatment plant issue at 3 a.m. He's always someone who's been able to come and say, hey, here's this issue, here's how we're handling it. He's never panicked. He's never, nothing ever seems to be outside of his control, which is certainly a quality you want to have in your city manager. But I think more than that, Norman is just a calming influence on people. He handles situations, difficult situations. In his tenure here over the last 8 years or so, we've gone through some of the most difficult times in our community. We've also, I think because of him, had some of our most successful times in our community. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Norman approaches every situation the same way. You know what you're going to get from him. You know what to expect. You never feel like you can't trust what he's going to tell you. You never feel like he's going to bring something to you that is unexpected. And so having Norman as our city manager for the last few years has been, from my perspective, working in city government, just been a fantastic. He's done such a fantastic job and created so much new growth, new economic activity, been such a steady influence so that our city could go do the things that we wanted to go do. And that's really hard to do when you don't, if you didn't have somebody who laid the foundation that Norman's laid. And that none of that has anything to do with the prior 35 years of Norman's excellent service as public safety director, as chief of police, as an officer here in our police force. And so I hope you will join me in welcoming Norman for his last appearance here at Rotary Club as our city manager, although I think we'll see him around somewhat after this. But please help me welcome Norman McNickle.
So I was a little concerned about this today, talking to you all because I know you. Couple of aspects. One, I was afraid the roof would fall in because I haven't been here in quite a little while. And that's because someone's kept me pretty busy. The other thing, I saw that it was listed as Norman's swan song. I will not do, in one of the interim positions that I was in, I happened to run into the person who was leaving. And I was kind of surprised to run into him, frankly. It was after hours. And he looked at me and said, I've left you a few surprises. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo, I swear. And out the door he went. So that's not going to be my swan song. First thing I want to do is thank the citizens of Stillwater for allowing me to do this job, and the council and the previous mayors and Hillary Driggs, God rest him, who started it all back in 1976. It's my intent to tell you a little bit about my career and then let you ask questions, which I may or may not answer. And Councilor Hardin, where are you? I apologize to Will and Kevin if I say something that embarrasses you. I'll just say up front, Will said, what am I going to do, fire you? So I came to Stillwater from Tulsa. I was a Tulsa Edison graduate, came here, enrolled in the university in business administration. And during that 4 years, well, actually during my sophomore year, I built a service station out on E6, self-service service station, which in that era was pretty unique. So gasoline, oil, retail, and wholesale. And during that time, met another person that was in that business, and good to see who's here today. And went into partnership with him. Had convenience store, gasoline outlet here in Stillwater, in Pawnee, at the Billings exit of I-35. Was making pretty good money. It was a little business called Buy and Buy. It eventually morphed into on cue. He said it, go find him. So in 1976, during my childhood, and this would never happen today, I had an uncle that was a career trooper, and he was able to, I got to ride around with him quite a bit as a pretty young person. And I was kind of intrigued by his job. And I'd always had an interest in law enforcement and decided that at the age of 24, I better try it before I got any older. And so I tried it for about 40 some odd years. And based on the explosive growth of OnQ, I probably was pretty much an idiot to get out of that business. But my career has been very rewarding. It's allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. I started out as a patrol officer in '76, rode the streets for about 14 months, had the misfortune, and Scott wrote about this, to be the first person on the scene at the AGR homecoming disaster. Not the one 10 years ago, but one earlier. Based on my investigation of that, and after it was over, they decided that he'd make a good detective. So they moved me to the detective division. I worked everything from a homicide to vandalism, and worked undercover, bought drugs, gambled, bought women. And I, again, apologize if that offends somebody, and had opportunities that were pretty amazing. In 1987, I progressed through the ranks. In 1987, the chief left, and I was appointed interim. At that point, I applied and was fortunate enough, Carl Weiner appointed me as chief of police. I did that until 2011, when I was appointed to the position of public safety director, where I supervised police, fire, emergency management, and the airport. Funny combination. But did that until 2015, when the city manager left. Gina Noble came to me, was married at the time. Said, "We'd like you to be interim." I said, "Okay, I can do that." And she said, "We'd like you to apply." And I said, "I will not do that." I had observed what city managers go through. So I did the job for 2 or 3 months. The deadline was approaching, and my ego said, "Hey, you can do this. You can absolutely do this." So I applied. Lo and behold, they appointed me, and I have been drinking from a fire hose ever since. The city of Stillwater is a complex organization, runs on a budget of about $154 million a year. It's never enough. And we try to do the right thing with the tax dollars that you give us, despite the Oklahoma legislature. Did I just embarrass you? So, they pass these laws that are goofy. One of the real disappointments I have right now is our inability to have civil discourse. If I disagree with Bob, I've got to hate him, and I've got to call him names, and I've got to publicly denigrate him and do all kinds of things, when our country was founded by people who argued like crazy, and they compromised, and they came up with what to date is the best form of government ever. And I blame a lot of that, frankly, on social media. I don't like it. The minute that I am gone on the 16th, I will be deleting several accounts. It's just a platform, in my opinion, for people to be able to say things about other people that they would not say to them in person, usually. Some would. So I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions, because I don't want to stand here and talk about things that you're not interested in. But throughout my career, I've had a lot of opportunities that I would have not otherwise had. As I said, I think I said, the city of Stillwater has been good to me and my family. I had the opportunity to attend the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and was there for several months, and got to tour the White House, the Congress. We were there when nobody else was there, and got to go to the thing, and I won't describe it further, but there's a thing called the Sunset Parade that happens in DC at the oldest Marine Corps barracks there. If you ever get the opportunity to go there, go. It is incredible. It's a silent drill thing, and the Marine Corps band plays while they're there. But it's a pretty impressive thing. I've met several presidents during my tenure. One vice president. And have had some pretty unique experiences. Stories. I have stories that I can tell that you might find offensive. You've got to understand that in this business, you have to see humor in things, or you will go absolutely nuts. I worked the Murrah bombing in Oklahoma City. I was, I think the mayor knows this, or the other council people. I was in jail for 3 days while I was there, because that's where we slept, the Oklahoma County Jail. Because I was a graduate of the FBI Academy, they put me in charge of a team of people that sifted through the 68 dump truck loads of stuff that came out of the pit. We found some pretty unpleasant things. The thing that bothered me most were the pictures and drawings and other things that belonged to the kids that were in the daycare center there. I do not agree with the death penalty in the way that we carry it out in the United States, but I could have pushed the plunger on that guy and not missed a minute of sleep. And Nichols should have followed him. If you weren't there, the other thing kind of interesting out of that whole thing, my dad owned a business at Northwest 8th in Harvey. He had a building that was about 50 feet wide and 150 feet long. When the bomb went off, it picked up the roof, turned it a little bit, dropped it. Fortunately, you'll find this funny, I hope. Fortunately, my mother was a coffee addict, and I have inherited that from her. And she got up to go get a cup of coffee, and when that explosion occurred and the roof dropped, the heat and air unit from the ceiling dropped onto her desk where she had been sitting. Probably would have lost her much earlier than what we had. My son Zach was also there working for my dad while he was going to dental school. And obviously my dad was there. Satellite Row was in front of that. They were imprisoned for about 3 days before they could get out of there after that explosion took place. So some of the other things that people ask me, what are your biggest disappointments? The inability, I think, today of a lot of people to be civil with each other is probably up at the top of my list. And I want to give you some unsolicited advice. So the council people, with maybe one exception, all have full-time jobs, and they work hard, and they are not well compensated for their efforts. They try to do absolutely the best thing that they can do with the city, with the resources that are available. And I share with them the inability to, Jimmy Ray, go to church, go to the grocery store, sit down and have a meal with my wife without somebody coming up and saying, when are you going to open that doggone street you've been working on for 6 weeks? So please, if you want to complain, call or email them during office hours. It's kind of unpleasant.
Some of the issues that Stillwater faces for the next 5 or 10 years that are most significant to you?
The number one issue right now is rehabilitating our water system. Not the distribution system here in town, but the call pipeline, water treatment plant, and we've got to have a storage facility. There was a guy named, and interestingly enough, Bill Thomas was mayor, and he's the one that pushed that issue. Stillwater's got to have a better source of water. We drew water from Lake Carl Blackwell at the time. He pushed that thing through, and there was people very unhappy with him, thought it was much too expensive and we'd never need all that water, and that was a crazy idea. And he started getting death threats. So as a young cop, I spent 2 or 3 nights in his garage, bodyguarding him. But it was really forward thinking. The problem is that pipeline was built like an oil pipeline, not like a water pipeline. The plant, at the time it was built 40 some odd years ago, there were 9 federal regulations. There's now over 100. We meet them, the water's safe, but there are 7 places where that pipeline crosses under something. Schooner Lake, the Arkansas River twice, Black Bear Creek, 412, 177. And if there's a catastrophic leak in those locations, we're in deep trouble because we've got about a day and a half of water. But that is the biggest issue facing the city and a lot of other municipalities. Somewhere between $170,000 and $220,000. I mean, million. Yeah, sorry. We are and have been down on bended knee in front of every federal resource that we can possibly get in front of. When the state received $1 billion in ARPA money, we applied for money from them. We made the first cut, and then they gave $20 million to rural water systems and said, see you later. And I gave you an example of the things that happen to us that are just crazy. So ESG, what is it? Energy, okay. Yeah, environmental, social, and governance, I think. So I talked about if you do something I don't like, I'm mad at you. Well, now we not only, if somebody does something we don't like, we legislate against them. So the last session of Oklahoma legislature, they passed a law that said, if you do these things, you can't do business with anybody in the state of Oklahoma. So that measure passed, and the treasurer was supposed to come out with a list of people that were on the naughty list. We, in the meantime, had entered into, we had a term sheet from, sorry, Gary, Victor, Scott, and all you guys, from the Bank of America for $13 million loan. I think the interest rate was 3.7 something. BOA, a week ago, Wednesday, ended up on the naughty list, along with JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Blackstone, BlackRock, all kinds of places, because somehow or another, we don't like what they're doing. We don't like their social program. All of those people still invest in oil and gas, but they have programs for people who say, I don't want to invest in that. And so we now can't do business with it. The next closest term sheet that we had was 4.8 something, $1.26 million, got it right that time, of difference in that loan in interest over the life of the loan. And why do you do that? Why do you do that? You know, if they want to do it for the state, fine. Why impose it on counties and municipal government? So I was instructed to tell a funny story. And somebody, I had to search my memory banks for one that was decent to tell in mixed company. I got a call one night, said there's been a shooting, you need to get to the hospital, the victim's in bad shape. And you're going to say, well, how is this funny? You'll find out. It's okay. Statute of limitations is passed. The person's deceased, not of the gunshot wounds, but old age. So I get to the hospital and this fellow's name's Eddie. I walk in and he's hooked up to everything and has IVs and his heart monitor going beep, beep, beep. And so I asked Eddie what happened. Eddie, what happened tonight? I apologize. This is just the truth. I had a mentor named M.T. Berry. He was chief of police in Oklahoma City. And he said, when I was early in my chiefdom career, he said, you tell the truth, tell it fast. So this is just the truth. Well, and you could smell out in the hallway that there might have been a lot of alcohol involved in this situation. And he said, well, we were sitting there watching TV and she was in her recliner and I was in my recliner and I got a little jiggy and I decided that I'd suck on her toes. So I commenced to suck on her toes. Yeah, well, what happened then, Eddie? She didn't like it. And I said, okay, what happened next? She told me to quit. Eddie, what happened next? How'd you get shot? Well, I quit for a second, but then I went back for another serving. And he said that really made her angry. She jumped up out of her recliner. She grabbed her pistol, and it wasn't bam, it was PAM. And it was Pam, 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 Pam. And 9 shots later out of 22, I said, okay, Eddie, what happened next? And he said, she left and went in her bedroom. Okay, what happened next? She came out with her pistol. And I said, okay, so what happened next? Pam, 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 Pam. And I said, okay. So Eddie, I said, we're going to take her into custody and we'll file charges. And he said, no, I'm not complaining. I said, we'll be back together later tonight. I kind of looked at him. I said, Eddie, I said, you're not getting out of here tonight. And he said, that little old thing, he points to his thigh. He's got a bullet wound in his thigh. And he said, that little old thing, he said, I'll be out of here tonight. We'll be back together and everything will be fine. I said, Eddie, you've been shot 9 times. He had no clue. He had it through and through in his neck, in his shoulder, in his arm. He had been, out of the 18 rounds she fired, she connected 50% of the time. None of them were in vital places. And his heart monitor started going, beep, 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 beep. And he said, where? And I was invited by the nurses to leave the room. So he survived, no charges were filed, and they were back together a couple of weeks later. So, and one more, and you might, under the circumstances, find this really objectionable. I don't mean for it to be, but it's what you find to keep your sanity in what is otherwise an insane situation. So when we were working at the Murrah bombing, we had National Guard people that were our laborers. And we would sift through the dirt, and we found all kinds of things. We found many guns, pizza, some other objectionable things. And we had been doing this for about 2 days. And bear in mind, you're all geared up in Tyvek and elbow pads, knee pads. And to give you an idea of how they took care of you there while you were working, I made the comment through my respirator to one of the people that, because it was dusty, and we had on goggles, said, you know, it'd really be nice if we had some eye drops here, kind of clean our eyes out. I had no idea anybody was in 100 miles, but there was a chaplain standing there, and within 45 minutes, we had cases of the stuff. At any rate, this kid, he's shoveling stuff up in there, and we start shaking it down. And he's standing on the other end watching, and he goes, what's that? And without thinking, I reached across, and I really wasn't. I didn't intend for this to happen, but it did. I reached across, I grabbed this thing, I threw it at him, and it was tumbling through the air. And as it was tumbling through the air and hit him in the chest, I said, it's a hot dog. I don't know what he thought it was, but it was a hot dog. Okay. Top humor, sorry. Biggest, the biggest fear I had in the city manager's job, and I'm sincere about this, it was disappointing these folks, not providing enough information during a city council meeting. We did that a few times. I would walk out with my tail between my legs. But I hope that for the most part, we were good at what we did. So I've had people ask me, why now? Because I can still walk right now. I have things on my bucket list I want to do. I have a new grandson in Colorado Springs as of April 30th. I'm going to give them about a month to get acclimated, and I'm going to go meet the next McNickle that's going to terrorize the world, and then head out to my cabin in Colorado and wear my arm out fishing. I will always, we're going to reside here. Everybody thinks, oh, you're moving to Colorado. No. This is a great place. Again, been very good to me and my family. I've got two sons that are professionals, in my opinion, because they went through the Stillwater school system. I've got another one that is employed as a estimator for a construction company in Oklahoma City. And between my wife, Deb, and I, we have 10 grandkids. So I have lots to keep me busy.
Are you actually going to come to Rotary now?
Who asked that? Where'd that come from? When I'm in town. So again, it's been my honor to serve. I hope I've done it reasonably well. I want to say that anything that I've been able to do in my career has been on the backs of the employees of the city of Stillwater. They're a great bunch of people. You cannot imagine what they go through. I have people from time to time that say, you got 3 people standing out there and only 1 guy digging. Yeah, he's trying to locate that fiber optic line or that telephone line or the data cable or whatever it is down to the bottom of that ditch. And when they finally locate the thing, they will continue digging. And I usually invite those folks, you know, these folks are out standing in knee-deep water in a ditch. Weather is 15 degrees. They're up at the car pump station with weed burners, heating in 15-degree weather, heating the pump so that they'll work. They're with bubble gum and baling wire, keeping that system running and providing you with what I think is the most important thing we provide, which is water. Live without electricity. It'd be a little difficult to do that without water. So they're a great bunch of people. They're what make the city run. So I can't get out of here without saying that. Other questions? We turn into a pumpkin in 4 minutes.
You know, Norman, a lot of people will see you as the police and city manager and such. You've been amazing in the number of organizations that you volunteered your time for that I've gotten to serve with you a couple on. But what are some of the highlights of that, of your time working for those organizations?
Well, again, at the risk of embarrassing somebody, of those charitable organizations, it was orchestrating the divorce between COCA and the Mission of Hope. Somebody should have gone to federal prison over that, but that organization is now in the best financial situation they've ever been in. So they do a lot of good. It's a place we really need, and that's one of them. The other was the CARES thing and the computer system that links those providers together. While we're at it, there's a book called When Helping Hurts. So just another piece of unsolicited advice. You drive by an intersection anywhere and somebody's got a sign that says need rent, need diapers, need food, help. Don't. They probably don't. There are professionals that do that, literally. Recently, there were people up at Perkins and McElroy that had been here last year during about the same time period. So if you have the opportunity to read that book, When Helping Hurts. It's, will give you some insight into where your charitable dollars go. Other questions? 2 minutes. All right.
With the esteemed leaders of Stillwater, Oklahoma, the question I have is, can we rename Boomer Lake, Boomer Road someday?
Probably not. You can't believe how expensive that would be. It would be incredibly expensive. And I will confess to you, since I tell you, you tell the truth and tell it fast. I live in a house divided. She'd scream at me. Oh, no, probably not.
Get up to that name first.
We did. We did. All right. Well, thank you all very much.